Ich stelle dir hier mal etwas vor, das auf den ersten Blick vielleicht nicht mehr als ein typisches Männerhobby ist, von dem man aber ultraschnell angesteckt werden kann. Es geht um Whisky. Ich selbst bin hier schon eine Zeit lang sozusagen etwas infiziert, denn es ist vielleicht ähnlich wie mit Uhrenliebe Ausdruck von Lebensgefühl, von Stil, auch ganz besonders von Tradition und natürlich von der Faszination für das Handwerk. Es geht also weniger um das Trinken, genauso wie es bei einer guten Uhr natürlich nicht um das Ablesen der Uhrzeit geht, sondern mehr um Historie, wie gesagt um Tradition, um händische Wertschöpfung auch, ja, alles Dinge, für die sich ein Mann einfach interessieren sollte. Wenn du mal ein bisschen in das Thema reinschnuppern willst, empfehle ich dir als erstes mal die Webseite maltwhisky.de, vielleicht die beste im deutschsprachigen Raum. Und die Betreiber Lukas und Samuel, die machen hier wirklich gute und authentische Arbeit. Ich krieg nichts von denen, empfehle den Auftritt aber dennoch gerne. Ja, ich selbst gönne mir natürlich hier und da auch einen guten Tropfen, habe auch eine kleine, aber feine Kollektion, deren Wert jetzt schon so im vierstelligen Bereich ist, auch wenn es nur ein halbes Dutzend Flaschen ist, alle so ungefähr 40 Jahre alt. Für mich kommt im Prinzip nur Single Malt Whisky aus Schottland und Irland in Frage, auch wenn ich weiß, dass andere Länder, Japan zum Beispiel und sogar Deutschland auch einiges zu bieten hat. Naja, vielleicht stelle ich dir meine kleine Sammlung irgendwann mal vor. Unter dem Video platziere ich dir mal ein paar, wie ich finde, hervorragende Einsteiger-Whiskys. Wirf, wenn du magst, da gerne mal einen Blick drauf und tauche in die Erfahrung hinein. Online habe ich noch eine wunderbare Mini-Doku gefunden, die so schön ist und Lust auf mehr machen könnte, dass ich sie dir hier auch mal spiegeln will. Danke fürs Zusehen, beste Grüße, ciao, ciao.
For centuries, whisky has held an enduring appeal for many. But for one man, Mr. Gooding, whisky became a personal devotion. Across decades of dedication, he carefully assembled a collection of over 3,900 bottles.
In terms of my time in whisky professionally, this is, I would say, easily top 5 collections that I've ever seen, and certainly the most extensive that I've ever seen come to market.
This collection for me is unprecedented. Not only is it the biggest collection of whisky ever to come to public sale, it's the biggest collection of Macallan, it's the biggest collection of Bowmore, it's the biggest collection of Springbank, and that list goes on and on and on.
Well, my name is Charles McLean, and I drink for a living. I'm a writer, specialising in Scotch whisky. My main interests are the history of Scotch whisky and what's called sensory evaluation, assessing quality.
I'm Angus McCrailed. I'm a freelance whisky writer, consultant, and I do some work with whisky festivals, tastings, and a lot with auctions, so valuing and dating and authenticating old bottles of whisky and tasting as many of them along the way as possible.
My name's Johnny McMillan. I'm the whisky cask buyer for Berry Brothers and Rudd. I'm the co-founder of the whisky show Old and Rare.
I found out about this collection through my friend and business partner, Johnny McMillan.
So I got a call from a friend of mine who runs a distillery in Arkansas. He told me that a friend of his had some bottles of whisky to sell and didn't know what they were worth.
I've got this collection I've heard about in America.
You know, I assumed it would be 10 or 20 bottles. Little by little, the list sort of dripped out.
I started looking through the list and I just couldn't believe.
Frankly, I was awed. The list goes on and on and on and on and on.
You know, 3,500 bottles.
And I started to see some photographs and...
jaw-dropping.
What is this ridiculous collection, you know?
Macallan Adami, 1926, Macallan Fine and Rare.
10 bottles of 40-year-old Lafroig. No one has that. That's, you know, ridiculous.
I was Richard's pilot for 35 years. We went to Ireland and Scotland, somewhere between 10 and 20 trips, specifically for auctions or purchasing whiskeys. We pulled up to Talisker and just knocked on the door, and people answered and they gave us tours, and it was before all of the tasting rooms were open and all the displays and stuff like that. He was into the whiskey business long before it became as popular as it is today.
My name's Becky Paskin. I was the editor of ScotchWhisky.com. I'm now a writer, consultant and whiskey specialist, and whiskey is quite honestly my life. Mr. Gooding's collection is nothing short of overwhelming, really. There's no other word for it. It's just staggering how much he managed to collect in just a couple of decades, flying all around the world to pick up bottles to either complete holes in his collection or just because he really loved the whiskey itself.
And we would go like Macallan, and we would go in and he would start talking to the people there, and he said, well, okay, I'd like to have this one, and I'd like to have these, and that one, and that one, and that one. And the next thing you know, they're kind of looking at him going, well, do you want these or do you want those? And he said, well, I want them all.
You can see through the bottles and through the collection a sense of what his passion was and the things he liked. And you can also get a sense of the more unique quirks in his tastes as well. That's what, to me, is the hallmark of a great collection.
The eclecticism of it, from a consumer's point of view, there is the opportunity to compare the same year, same whiskey, but different bottlers, different bottlings. So you can have vertical tastings or horizontal tastings galore.
To purchase so many of one particular bottle as well shows that he wasn't in it just for collecting purposes. He was in it to try bottles, to open them and enjoy it with friends, for the love of whiskey, basically.
He tasted a lot when we were on these trips, but the great majority of his purpose was to have a collection at the end of one of everything that was ever made. The perfect collection.
So there's over 3,500 bottles in his collection that'll be going to the secondary market. I think they're really going to energize that market and provide a lot of excitement for buyers all around the world.
Buying a bottle of whiskey from this collection could be considered as carrying on Mr. Gooding's legacy in a way. It's also a way for a buyer to really have a sense of provenance about where that bottle has come from, so who's purchased it in the first place. That person has lovingly cared for it because they have such a passion for whiskey.
If you're in whiskey like me for old bottles and history and bottled history, then there's very few things like this have ever come to market or happened. You know, a whole collection like this, it's pretty unprecedented, I would say.
This collection is so comprehensive. Mr. Gooding clearly was a dedicated, passionate individual with a keen eye for collecting rare, unique, amazing whiskies, buying from distilleries that have long since closed. And then you've got the collection that sort of evolves through more recent periods up to the legendary Macallan Fine and Rare series, or the Macallan Adami in the 1926 bottlings, which are legendary in themselves. The collection has a wide range of independent bottlings of Signatory and Cadenheads and Samaroli. These bottles are infamous in the quality of whiskey that was put inside. You know, the uniqueness of some of these independent bottlers, these US imported bottles. So Whisky Auctioneer really evolved around the desire to really be a part of whisky history and the love of being involved in what could be described as a golden era of whisky making and whisky drinking or collecting. It's hugely exciting to be a part of bringing all of these whiskies together, all of the focus of one man's passion into an opportunity to auction those bottles and present them to the wider public.